Aloha, everyone. Welcome. We're glad to have here Miss Goldie Lefkowitz, Goldina, who has also written a book about her experiences. So, yeah, so feel free, if you'd like to also read her book, you can find it on Amazon under her name, Goldina Lefkowitz. It's about her experience growing up under Nazi Germany. And we'll get to hear live now about her experience, which I think everyone that hears such a story takes away a different lesson. Everybody has a different type of message in their own lives that they take away listening to someone that has gone through from the worst horrors in our history, something that no one ever wants to see repeated again to anyone at any time. And there's lots that we can learn. And like everything in life, the question is not, why did this happen? But what do we do about this that has happened? A Jew doesn't ask, why is this the situation? But rather, what do I do in this situation? A Jew is always looking to say, if God made this happen, there's clearly something that we are called upon to do. Our job is not to justify God, to explain God, since God never hired us as his lawyers and he doesn't need our input. It doesn't help the situation when one explains their own assumptions as to why something happened. We don't know. And ultimately, it's beyond anyone's pay grade. If we're human, we don't know why certain things happen. But the question we ask ourselves always is, what is there that I can do different in my life because of what I know, what I experienced, or what I heard from someone that has experienced something? So without further ado, we'd like to hear directly from Ms. Lefkowitz.
Okay. Aloha, everyone. It's so wonderful to be out after being in for so long. So I'll start from the beginning. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my parents. Both my parents come from Poland. They were born in Poland. My father was 2 years old when his family moved from Poland to Germany. And my mother comes from a family of 10, 8 girls and 2 boys. So things were really tough in Poland in those days. My grandfather was an artist. He was a silversmith, and he made some beautiful things. And I got some, I gave them to my daughter, so at my daughter's house. And but tonight is a different night. Tonight is the first Seder. We are celebrating the first Seder, which is a wonderful holiday. I always compare it to Thanksgiving Day. We are thankful and we are cheerful, and we can drink wine legally, especially children too. That's how I was raised. So, and tonight, like I said, is Seder, was the first Seder. And my mother was a strict cleaning woman. And she was looking around. All her sisters were there except one. One remained in Poland. But other sisters came with their husbands and kids. And we had, not as big as this, but we had a big dining room. And they outdid themselves, bringing their best foods. But we had a maid, and she forgot to, oh yeah, at the end of the dining room was a sink, and under the sink was brass fittings, and the maid forgot to polish the fittings. So of course my mother couldn't stand it. So she got a cloth and polished and got on her hands and knees to polish the fittings. But I have forgotten to tell you, my mother was 9 months pregnant. So she did the polishing, but when she wanted to get up, she couldn't. And in those days, we didn't go to the hospital. We waited for the midwife. And by the time my father called the midwife, the baby was born, and that was me. And I was born under the kitchen sink. That's what I'm known for. Well, that was another simcha for that night, the Seder and my birth. And my family was Orthodox, not super duper Orthodox, but Orthodox. My mother kept a kosher home, and well, that speaks for itself. Why don't you come and sit down? Thank you. And my father always wanted to, oh yeah, my father was 2 years old when he came to Germany. So he spent his early life in German schools. He was educated in Germany, but he had high dreams. He wanted to be an attorney. But in those days, a Jewish attorney is unheard of. So he couldn't do that. And his parents, both of them were very sick, and he was the only breadwinner. So he had to find some way of making money. And so he became, of all things, he became a custom tailor. A custom tailor is not an ordinary tailor. It's a person who starts from scratch. You make a pattern, and then you cut the whatever he's making, pants or a suit or whatever. And he had a good business going. But life for me personally was a good life. I was grown up with lots of family. Oh yeah, I come from Cologne, Germany. Cologne is actually I can't remember my own city's name. I mean in English. I'll tell you later when I think of it. So his business was going well. And I grew up in a Jewish public school. Everybody was Jewish. The principal was Jewish. And all the teachers were Jewish. And Hebrew and Bible was on the curriculum. So, and we had a lovely school. And boys and girls were separated. It wasn't actually an Orthodox school, but Jewish school. That's what they did. And when I was 9 years old, I'm skipping 9 years. When I was 9 years old, I was introduced to Jewish organizations, and I belonged to two. Maccabi Hatzair and Hashomer Hatzair. And we had a building, it's called the Youth House, where all the young kids from 9 years old can congregate, play games, learn Jewish songs, everything. It's equivalent to the Girl Scouts here. We went on trips, and I learned so much about Palestine that was my one desire, And he, my dream man, if you can call him, was Theodor Herzl. And I had a big picture of him in my bedroom. We had, where I come from, that area, there's no private homes. Everybody lived in apartments, like some places over here, not here, but on the mainland. And we went on tours, and to make ends meet, my parents had 2 rooms. They were always renting out to renters, single room, and that's what made us apartment rent-free practically. And we had all kinds of people. I grew up with all kinds of people, from artists to crooks. I mean, we couldn't delve into them, find out who they were. They didn't have all these possibilities to research. But we were happy kids. But things have changed. There was a time when I couldn't leave my house. The Hitler Youths were always outside waiting for me to harass me. So my father hired a man. He looked like a Nazi in a black uniform, and he was called the Black Knight with a K, not to confuse with Knight. Also, we found that all over the city, I come from the Rhineland, so we had beaches all over the place. There were big signs going up on the beaches, in the parks, opera house, the movies, wherever public meets. Jews and dogs not allowed. And our synagogue, the one I belonged to, a conservative synagogue, because they had a choir. And I was a member of the choir, an all-girl choir. And in order to get to the choir, we could walk or take my bike through the park. It just took 5 minutes to get there. But if we honor the signs, it took at least 10 minutes to get there. So I took a chance. I looked around and I didn't see any Nazis around me. So I took my bike and went right through the park to get to the synagogue, because our director, or choir director, was one of those men, if you're 1 minute late, you get punished. So I wanted to be on time. And as I rode my bike through the park, there were 4 guys waiting for me, Hitler Youth. And they made me get off my bike, and they asked me if I can read. What does it say? And I refused to answer what it said. And he said some very nasty things. And I took every bicycle was equipped with an air pump. I took my air pump out of the bike, the holder there. And I said to him, "Don't touch me." And by doing that, I was raising my hand with the pipe, and accidentally I brushed the guy with the uniform. And before you know it, they sent somebody for their leader. And they wanted to arrest me. And I said, what is the reason? I violated, my Jewish hands violated the Nazi regime. So they marched me home and they wanted to arrest my father. But that's where the lucky part comes in. Being born in Poland at that time, all children from Polish parents are Polish automatically. I still have my Polish passport. I've never been to Poland in my life. And so we could say we are guests in Germany. They can't arrest us unless we do something drastic. So my father had to pay a fine or go to jail. Of course, he paid the fine. So that was my life. Wherever I was going, I had to look over my shoulder. We had a next door neighbor who lived on the same floor. And they were Catholic. And they had two children, a boy and a girl, of course, in the Hitler uniform. And the boy, the son, was told to whatever goes on in his house to repeat to the leaders. Well, he was an ardent Nazi, that kid. He was about 17, 18. And his father, he was a very nice man. He felt free to vent his anger and his rage at Hitler. And he thought, being in his own home, he could do what he wanted to. And the boy didn't lose any time at all to tell his leader what his father said. And I saw two Nazis come up the staircase, go to the house, drag this man out, shove him down the staircase, kick him, and we never saw him again. They must have beaten him. So that was one of the things I saw. I wanted to tell you what I'm telling you now is only things that I have seen, not just heard. There's plenty that I've heard, but what I have seen, I want to relate to you. There was another incident. It was the day before Mother's Day in May, and they changed the marketplace, the outdoor marketplace, into a flower place. And I decided to buy my mom flowers. So I took my bike and I'm standing there till it was my turn to go up there. And there was an elderly Jewish man with a big black beard. And sure enough, some Nazi boys, they're all teenagers. And one took out some matches and lit his beard. And I was considered a Girl Scout in our area. That would be a Girl Scout. You help people. But I was afraid to help people. There's nothing to help this man. I couldn't do anything. So I jumped on my bike and never got the flowers. And I rode home and I was hysterical. So I don't know what happened to that poor man. Some people came over to help him. But those people got their names written down in the book who helped. Another incident, we had a supermarket that was owned by Jews. And they put a swastika on the front window with wet paint and put a sign on the bottom saying Jude. Jude means Jews in German, Jude, J-U-D-E, Jude. And then they had a building across the street, and on top of the roof, they had photographers taking pictures who's going into that supermarket. And everybody was afraid to go in. There was hardly anything left there to eat anyhow. As a family, we were 5 in our family. We were entitled to 1 egg per person per week. So many times I was the one who had to go stand in line. Sometimes in the winter time, it was very, very cold. And by the time I got there weren't any more eggs to be had. And those things went on. They harassed people. They, my father had his best friend was a jeweler, and he had a jewelry store in the center of Cologne. And he was an observant Jew, so on Friday night, he closed the business to go to services. And his wife called my father and said, my husband hasn't come home yet. What shall I do? He hasn't come home yet. And so my father put on his coat and he went down to the jewelry store, and it was padlocked. And the next day, or 2 days, I don't remember, his wife got a box brought to him by a uniformed officer and saying, "These are your husband's ashes." And they ransacked the jewelry store, confiscated everything in their trucks. They came with trucks. And we kids, the edict was, if you meet more than 3 people at one time, it's a meeting, and you're not supposed to. You can't meet more than 2. So we had to meet silently. And we made decisions where we're going to meet. And we always rode our bikes in 2, just 2 people, 2 girls. It was mostly girls, yeah. And one time I want to tell you, I always consider myself a very lucky person. I've been so lucky all my life, and that was one of the lucky days. We decided to go on a hike. And on the Rhineland there's a row of mountains called Siebengebirge. And Siebengebirge means 7 mountains. And we picked our favorite mountain and put our bikes, hid our bikes down in the woods, and it took about an hour to get to the top. And we were laughing and we were having a good time. And when we get on top, we decided to have our lunch. We bought our lunch in our knapsacks. So we sat on the ground. Well, there was a lot of grass, but there were about 8 or 10 of us girls. And we had a leader, her name was Vera, and she was 18, and we were 12, 14, around that age. And while we were having such a good time, we heard singing Nazi songs. The same way we came up, they had the same idea we did. And they didn't see us at first. So they went over the other side of the mountain and took out their knapsacks and had lunch. And then one of them spotted us. So they came over. 2 guys came over and wanted to know who we are. Now, Vera was a very intelligent girl at that time. And she saw what was going on. And she walked among us and she said, "Speak Hebrew." We didn't know Hebrew to converse. We didn't, but we knew Hebrew songs. And so she says, anything but Hebrew. And we knew Hebrew prayers. So we talked like we understood each other. We said things that we know, but we didn't even know what it was. We took songs, Hebrew songs, and made a conversation out of it. And and then some more guys came over and asking us who we were. And we said in very broken German, we don't understand. And one of them came over and asked, and then he said, he practically spit at us. And he said to the other guys, he says, "Oh, leave them alone. They're probably gypsies. And gypsies are bad luck." So they all walked over to the other side. And as soon as they were out of sight, we packed the lunch in the knapsack and very slowly walked towards the exit and ran down. What took us an hour to come out took 10 minutes to get down. And we jumped on our bikes and we were gone. And those things happened to us all the time. We all loved the opera. And even little kids, my father took me to the opera when I was 5 years old. I didn't understand it, but the music was beautiful. So it was close to us. The movies was close to us. And we had to make, it's very difficult if you have a group of girls and nobody had a telephone. And to communicate what are we gonna do. But we found places to go. Some museums were still open, but when they didn't have any signs up. But then when they found out we're Jewish girls, they chased us even out of the museum. So life was tough. So one time, my girlfriend Elizabeth was tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, and she stood out among us. Well, anyhow, she came to my house one morning and said, "Goldina, I decided today you are going to learn how to swim. I said, I am? And she says, yes. Go put on your bathing suit under your things. We'll go swimming. So she was a year older than I was, so I had to obey. And I wanted to learn how to swim, but there wasn't any opportunity for it. And then when we got to the beach and saw those signs, I said to her, Elizabeth, we can't do this. We're going to be in trouble. And she says, oh, I know what to do. I get along with them. I just tell them I'm one of theirs. I said, that's not going to work. And she says, well, let's try it. So we took our clothes off. We had our bathing suits underneath, and we went into the water. And she was showing me some moves, how to, and before I know it, I didn't even see those guys. I didn't see them. I was so absorbed in learning that they grabbed me from the back and they held my head underwater. I thought that was the end of me. I didn't even have enough breath to take another breath to save myself. They held me under, I don't know for how long. And Elizabeth was screaming for them to get away. And there were some elderly people sitting on benches near the water. And they came running with their canes and beating on the boys. And they got scared. For once they got scared and they ran away. And the upstart of all this was, to this day, I'm terrified of water. Here I'm living in beautiful Hawaii, surrounded by water. And if I take a few steps into the water and someone comes near me, I run away. Now, there's a funny story to this too. I mean, all my life, and I'm 99, so all my life I avoided going swimming in the water. But the funny story is later on, when I got married, and it was World War II, and my husband joined the Navy, and guess what his job was? Teaching swimming, abandoning ship, and life-saving. That was his job. He did it very well, but he couldn't teach me how to swim. No way. But there's another funny story to this. Later on, when I had children, while he was in the Navy, he was a chief petty officer, so I had privileges. I could go into the swimming area and sit down on deck and watch him work. And I found out he never once went into the water. He taught swimming from the deck. And I watched what he did. So when we had kids, when we had children, we had a boy and a girl, I taught them how to swim. I said, don't do what I do. I'm not going in the water. Just do what I tell you to do. And they're excellent swimmers to this day. So go figure that out. So that was my life. And I don't wish it on anybody. They said I'm a Holocaust survivor. I never believed it, because my idea of a Holocaust survivor was someone who lived in the camps and really had to survive. We always had enough food to eat. And so I wrote a letter to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. and said, I wanted to know what makes a Holocaust survivor. I'm not going to say to anybody that I am one if I'm not. So they sent me a whole big letter who a Holocaust survivor is. You don't have to be in the camps. You have to be aggravated against. You had to be um, all the things that we had to live through except going into camps. And my schooling only went to the 8th grade because the Jewish public school got closed. And so I lost out on my education. Really, 8th grade, I learned to read and write and all that stuff, but that's not a real education, that's just the basics. And that made me a Holocaust survivor. So here we have a rabbi in Hilo. I don't know if anybody knows Rabbi Rachel. And she came to my house one time and she wanted to know, she heard about me, that I'm a Holocaust survivor. So the first thing I said to her, Rabbi Rachel, I'm not a Holocaust survivor. I'm just somebody who lived in that area for that period of time. She says, no, Goldie, you got it wrong. You are one. And you have to let the world know. So everybody knows Mitch Roth, right? Mitch Roth became my friend. He gave me a venue in his courthouse. And he sent out flyers that Goldie Lefkowitz is going to talk. And I told him, I said, I'm not a speaker. I never gave a talk to anybody in my life. He says, you can do it. You will do it. We need you. And he asked around, and I was the oldest. At that time, I was 96, the oldest so-called Holocaust survivor. And so he gave me this venue and I told him, I said, you don't have to put all these chairs out. People are not interested, they don't care. Well, I was surprised. 100 people showed up and they had to bring in more chairs and more chairs. So that was my first talk. And I was really scared. And one of my friends, he made a video of it. And the newspaper picked it up. And now I'm a picture in the newspaper. But what I like best of my chosen volunteer job, I got to talk to students. I went to schools, middle school and high school. I refused to go to grade schools. I said they're too young to find out how cool the world is. And but these students, high school students, they were wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. They came from Waimea, a whole class. No, there were several classes because there were 200 kids. I am a member of the Kona Seniors. And I don't know if anybody knows where, I forgot the name of it. We had a building and we met every week. And they came from Waimea and they learned how to sing a song. They sung to me and they were so attentive. It was unbelievable. It couldn't happen in a New York school, believe me. But and when they were done, they each wrote a card how much they liked it. And some of them had a cross and a Morgenthau on it. And it thrilled me really. And to show their appreciation, then I came to do that. And so I didn't tell you about my two brothers. My brother Otto was born 1 year before me, 1 year and 12 days. But we were never close. We got close when both of us got married. That's when we got close. It's a long time to wait. But my younger brother, Alvin, he was the brain in the family. He was 10 when he came over, 10 years old. He refused to go to school because nobody spoke German. If he had Spanish, he could have gotten along, but so we made him go to school. My father walked him to school and you stay put. And he did. And he became a physicist from not wanting to go to school. And if anybody remembers World War II, there was a Dr. von Braun. Well, my brother was his right-hand man. And I wanted to say something else. Okay, my brother Otto, okay. One day, one of my father's childhood friends from school friend, he was a high-ranking officer, a high-ranking Nazi. And he came to have a suit made. And he said to my father, he said, David, take it from me. It's time for you to leave. Up to that time, my father thought this was a passing thing. It's going to go away. But it escalated and it didn't go away. And when his friend said, Jan, it's time for you to leave, take my word for it. He knew what he was talking about. So my father had an uncle in Brooklyn. He was an attorney. And my father got in touch with him and said, we want to go to the United States. Will you vouch for us? So he wrote back, yes, I'll vouch for you for 5 people. Because in those days, you had to have someone vouch for you so you wouldn't be a burden on the government. And so we had to go from Cologne to Stuttgart. In Stuttgart was the American consulate. And we were examined, but I'm ashamed to say what I'm saying now. I ran away from home. No way was I going to the United States. No way. I'm going to Palestine because one day it'll be Israel. And that's where I'm going. And my parents left. Where is she? What is she doing? Well, I hitchhiked my way away to Berlin. I was going to Berlin to go to Youth Aliyah and they'll take care of me. I had it all figured out. Well, my parents contacted the police and one of them pulled me by the ear and said, you pay attention to what your father says or else. I was like, okay, you listen to those voices. And of course, I went to Stuttgart with them. And the nice thing of having my mother had 8 sisters and 2 brothers. Wherever we went, there was one of my sisters living. of her sister's living. And we started packing. We got the passports, and not the passports, the visas. But we had to go to England. That was the only ship available that would take refugees. 2 days before we were leaving, we were packing, and my brother Otto had terrible stomach aches. So nobody had a car. And taxis wouldn't pick up Jews. So he took his bike and went to our family doctor, Dr. Ox, who was Jewish and part of the Jewish hospital outside town. And my brother had an appendix attack. And because he had a high fever, they couldn't operate. So we had a problem. We had to leave. We had to leave. So another aunt was scheduled to go to the States 2 months later. She promised my father she'll take care of my brother. But the long trip we took from Cologne, we had to take a train to Aachen. In Aachen is the city right on, it's a borderline between Germany and Belgium. In Aachen, we had to go out of the train while they looked through our suitcases. And we had another physical. And I was standing when this Nazi took my suitcase, and then I remembered my favorite author was Heinrich Heine. And I had 4 of his books in my suitcase, on the bottom of my suitcase, wrapped in towels. And that was verboten. It was against their rules to take Jewish books out of the country. It wasn't a Jewish book, just the author was Jewish. And he went through my suitcase, and I realized I'm in trouble, and my family is in trouble. If he finds the books, no telling what would happen. And my father had made me a skirt, a long skirt with pockets in the front, with zippered pockets in the front. And I had one of my father's big handkerchiefs. I put all my foreign coins that I collected and put it in one of the pockets, figuring like a stupid 16-year-old, oh, they're safe in there, nothing will happen. Well, he stuck his hand in one pocket. Now I want to tell you how lucky I was. The coins were in the other pocket. And then the conductor was yelling at him, get these people on the train, they're late already. So my face must have been so white. I was shaking because I would have, I don't know what would, they had such interesting punishments. I wouldn't call them interesting, and that's where we were heading if they would have found it. But I was so lucky. The books were on the bottom, and he never got to the bottom of the suitcase. never got into my pocket. So he shoved everything in a suitcase and said, go, go, go. And then he winked at me. And when a Nazi winks at you, that means he's not really a Nazi. He's a resident like everybody else was and was forced to be a Nazi. You didn't see any men walking around in town with a suit on, uniforms all over the place. So they were forced to. So finally we got into Belgium and my mother had a sister there. She left before all this trouble started. The sister didn't have any children, so her and her husband just moved to Belgium. And that's the first time we ate in Germany, all we got was black bread. It's very hard on the system. We had white bread, we had bagels, we had bialys, we had fresh fruits, and we all got sick because we didn't know what to eat first. We hadn't had decent food for such a long time. So from Belgium, we went to Holland, and we had cousins there in Antwerp. And we spent some time with them. And then we went to London. I tell you, Jewish people are so wonderful. Here come 4 refugees and strangers took us in and gave us a place to sleep and a place to eat. And from there, we went to Southampton, where we took the ship. Now, I found out just recently, a few months ago, I was watching a program, I don't remember the name of it, but the name of the ship, it was the Georgic, and it was a Cunard White Star Line, was the last ship to leave England, the last refugee ship leave England. If we would have missed that ship, they would have sent us back to Germany. And he took us in, another funny joke. They had a son, was 1 year older than I was, and he volunteered to show me London. And all this time while we were traveling, we didn't know about my brother. Is he alive? Is he dead? Did he make it? Not a word, nothing. So my parents were not happy people. But anyhow, here we are in London, and the only problem was he couldn't speak 1 word of English, and I couldn't, of German, and I couldn't speak any English. So we decided we had to go to a museum. You don't need a language to go to a museum, you just watch. So we spent the whole day in a London museum, which was fabulous. Then he took me home, and my uncle said to me, in Yiddish, of course, he said, well, what do you think? How do you like London? I said, oh, London, oh, I almost got killed. You know, they drive on the wrong side of the street. They say we drive on the wrong side of the street. That's not true. So I said, oh, London is fine, but I don't understand why there's so many toilets. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, every other house had assigned toilets. So we didn't understand each other. So I said, let me write it. And it said, to let. 2 words, to let. And of course, with my non-knowledge of English, I thought it meant toilet. There was a standing joke in my family. So we boarded the Georgic, and we were on our way. It took us 12 days to get to New York. And the waters were very rough. We were all sick, except my mother, who was the sickly one. She took care of us. We were all seasick. But on the seventh day, the captain himself came to our room to tell us he got a telegram that my brother is fine and he'll be arriving 2 weeks later than we did. So that's basically my life as a child. I have to tell you one more joke. And those of you who come from Brooklyn will appreciate it. My aunt, who lived in Brooklyn, made a feast for us. And my cousin Faye, well, in German, it's funny, Fanny, said, "You want to go to a park?" I said, "Sure." So we went to a park and there were some boys, and I haven't seen a swing for years. I said, "Oh, a swing, let me go." So we went on the swings, and some of the boys, well, I must have looked funny with my outfit, or they looked funny to me. Well, I wanted to go on a swing and he wouldn't let me. And he said to me, "Get out of here." I said, "What?" He says, "Get out of here." So I said to my cousin, "Let's go. They're not friendly people. Or maybe they are friendly. I don't know. Maybe they said welcome. I don't know." So my uncle says, "Well, have you learned any English already?" And I said, "Yes, get out of here." I called my uncle. Well, it wasn't the right thing to say, but knowing that I couldn't speak English, I understood. And I don't know what else I remember that I want to tell you. There are lots of things. I'll tell you one thing. My father had a friend, he lived around the corner, and he had a hardware business. We called him Uncle Willie because they went to school together. And when you went into his shop, as you walked into his shop, there's a giant size of Adolf Hitler. And for a long time, I didn't want to go into the shop. And he said, "It's safe, it's safe." But one time in the evening, my father sent me over to get something, and it was in the evening. And he had to unlock the door because it was after hours. And when I walked in, the same Hitler picture, turned around, it was Jesus. From that time, I felt I was safe with him. So there were lots of places that, like I told you, that we couldn't go. Lots of people disappeared. But my family was very lucky. Even my brother was lucky getting out there alive. So he had somebody come to the States with him. Actually, I don't have much more to say. It's but I wanted to tell you that whatever I said, I have seen with my own eyes or heard. Not a say so. Somebody says, he said this, he said that. No. So when someone tells you there was no Holocaust, don't believe it. There was a Holocaust. And I met some people. I don't know if you ever heard of a lady, her name was Ruth Gruber. Anybody does? She was a Holocaust survivor, a real Holocaust survivor. She ran from the camps into Switzerland, running by night. And she came to our temple, and I lived in Saratoga Springs, New York for a long time. And she came and spoke to us about her. And she wrote a little book, and I bought the book, and she signed it for me. And I can't find it. So my son wanted to read it. I said, "Oh, it's there. Look in the bookcase right there." Nowhere, it disappeared. So I don't think it's in print anymore. She wrote it so long ago. But she came to our temple to speak, like I am speaking, but she was more elaborate, which I can't do. I get too emotional. And she had passed away. And she was 92 when she talked. And she went from state to state. What people need to know. That was her title. What people need to know. And I had a chance to talk to her. And I knew whatever she said was the truth. So, and here I am. I'm 99. And I don't know how I get here. I mean, I really don't know. Who gets to be 99 years old? It's incredible. I said, somebody made a mistake. So is there anything do you have any questions to me?
Let me also open up the Zoom for questions in case someone wants to ask over here. But feel free if anybody wants to ask.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead. Someone wants to ask.
Do you remember what age you were when problems started?
I can't hear.
I'll repeat it.
America? When you,
Sorry, one more time.
what age you were when problems?
Yeah, I was 16.
And what age you were when you went to America, when you finally got on the boat?
What age were you when you finally came to America? How old were
I
you?
was 16.
What age,
16.
what age were you when the problems started?
How old were you when the problem started in Germany?
Well, another thing, how lucky we were. 2 months after we left Germany, they had Kristallnacht. I think all you know what Kristallnacht was, where they broke all the windows, Jewish homes and stores, and killed people. And we were lucky. We were in London that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was 16, but I didn't have a brain in my head, or I would have been much smarter about some things. But I was lucky, and I got away with a lot of stuff. Anybody else? What a sweet baby.
Anybody on the Zoom, if you'd like to ask a question to yourself? But I guess if no one else asks,
Oh, 1 minute. Janet, there's a lady here, her last name is Koenig, just like yours. Oh, but she's on Zoom. Eva Koenig, that's your name, right? Yeah, okay. Never know where you meet somebody.
I have a question. Was there any Jewish people that felt they want to fight back? They want to stick up for themselves?
Oh yeah, of course. But how can you fight when you don't have any any tools to fight with? They never had any tools. They didn't have any guns. Well, you heard about the Warsaw Uprising, right? They took a stand before we get killed, we'll kill them. With your bare hands? No. No, we didn't have a chance. The Jews didn't have a chance because they were so cruel. They're sick dogs on you, German shepherds. They should have been good dogs, not trained for killing people. And those people, there were a lot of Christians that couldn't see what was going on. I mean, they refused to see what was going on. And they saved people. They hid them in garages, not garages, in barns, in attics. And if they got caught, it was their lives. They got killed. So it's, and I think of my Tante Regina. She lived in Stuttgart. Her husband was a Hebrew teacher, the first Hebrew teacher who had a typewriter, a Hebrew typewriter. And they had two daughters. Now, Masha, that was her name in Israel, but her name was Marta. Those parents had to go to the train station and put Marta on the train to go with the youth aliyah, and knowing they were never going to see their oldest daughter again. And the little one was Paulina. They also had to go. The parents didn't make it. They were killed in Auschwitz. But these wonderful people in England, they took so many thousands of Jewish kids and adopted them and raised them. And Paulina was one of them. They raised her as a nurse. And Paulina came to, but she was young. She was seven or eight. And many times that thing of parents putting their kids on the train, not knowing where they're going. Will we ever see our children again? It's unbelievable what went on. They killed people like famous artists, violinists, whose life was to entertain people. They killed them just because they were Jews. Why? It's a question nobody can answer. So well, I'm at the end of my show.
Any questions? Yeah.
What do you think of Germany today?
What do you think of Germany today?
Oh, when I turned 50, I decided I don't know where that came from. I have to go to Germany. They're waiting for me. I had nobody there, nobody left. So my husband and I went to Germany. And it's a funny feeling. You sit on the bus and there's a man 10 years older than me sitting next to me. And I would think, how many Jews has he killed? That's That's what goes to everybody's head when you sit next to people or in a plane or on a ship. What was he doing? Of course, they never said there were Nazis. Nobody was a Nazi, nobody. But most of them got what was coming to them. But hearing about it is different than living through it. It was most people that come from concentration camps refuse to talk about it because they get very emotional and they break down. And I've met some of them. They just don't want to talk about it. So I said to my father, I said, when I was of age, I was married by then. And I said, Pop, Max and I are going to Israel. He said, you are? I said, yes. And we may never come back. He said, you had a taste of the United States and you'll be back, believe me. And he was right. My husband and I went 3 times to Israel. And I had such a strong feeling getting out of the plane in Tel Aviv and see chalutzim with guns, girls, watching who gets off. And I said to my husband, Mac, I really want to stay here. Will you stay here with me? He says, no, I'm a Yankee. I'm going home. So I feel if you went through a time like I did, you want to go someplace where nothing else but Jewish flags are flying. It's a wonderful thing. You will walk across the street and the cop is Jewish. The cleaner man is Jewish. I mean, everybody's Jewish. My cousin, my cantor's son, was in Tel Aviv in a cheder, and he said, when he come to Israel, said to me, his name was Peter. Look me up. I'll show you Israel like a native would. So my husband went inside and talked to the rabbi, and he said, can you release him for a few hours? He says, nope, he's got to stay. So we were tourists 3 times, and I found a lot of family in Israel. And the strange thing, at us, I don't know what year it was, but it was in the early 60s, the first time we went. And he couldn't find a bar all over Tel Aviv. But when you went to a family's home, everybody was so excited to see Americans, like they've never seen an American. Of course, they didn't. I stayed in a kibbutz for two weeks. It's rough living in a kibbutz, but I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, when you go to a family's house, the cabinets open up and all kinds of drinks. Anything you want to drink, we got it. Got no bars. I don't know if it's what it's now. I don't know. I haven't been for a long time. But my nephew, my Otto's son, made Aliyah right after that, he married a rabbi's daughter. And now this boy, he was a Shagets. You know what a Shagets is? It's really not a nice word, but he had an afro like this, and in New York. And I went to his bar mitzvah. And he met this girl, and the girl's father turned him around, and he became an Orthodox Jew. It's and now he's in Israel for quite a few years, and he's got a business, and he's got 6 children, and now he's a grandpa. So he wouldn't leave Israel, no. But and I had my cousin's husband. He was a driver on the Agate bus, and he says, "Come by here between 4 and 6. I'm free. I usually park someplace. I'll drive you wherever you want to go." So it's not what you know, it's who you know. Talking about this, I want to get away from my topic. My family, my son and his wife, and my grandson and his wife, and 2 toddlers, 3 and 4, and my 50-year-old granddaughter came to visit me for my 99th birthday. But they wouldn't release them off at the airport in Kona here because they didn't have that piece of paper to prove that they took the test. So they quarantined them in a little room. And of course, I couldn't go see them, but we had constant phone calls from them. So I decided no way are they going to stay in a room, 7 people with 2 kids, you know. So I said, come on over. My house is not big, but we'll stretch it. So I had wonderful friends. One came with a portable bed, and we had 2 futons somebody brought, and my daughter-in-law is a fantastic cook. She did all the cooking. So all of a sudden, instead of 2 people in the house, no, mine, I was alone, my husband, not 2 people. My daughter lived someplace else. But from a single person, all of a sudden we got 8 people. And you walk in the house, oh, these people. And we made it work. And this is the first time in my life that I've met my 2 great-grandchildren. And I loved every minute of it. So if you live long enough, you can say that. So
someone asked, what was the name of the Holocaust survivor that's
no, the only one I remember is Ruth Gruber. Gruber. Yeah. Yes. Haven. Haven. En. Yeah, Haven.
And someone raised their hand on Zoom, someone would like to ask a question.
Hmm? Yeah, but Yeah, the reason I never had an education after my 8th grade was when I came out 16 by law, I would have had to go to high school. But you can't just walk into high school not knowing the language. So I couldn't do that. Besides, I had to go to work. Everybody worked in my family because we didn't want to accept charity from my American family. And my father promised his uncle that we would not be a burden to the country. And that's how it worked. We worked out. We any job we could get, if we liked it or not, uh, we took. Money is money.
And Sherry wanted to ask Sherry would like to ask something.
Who's that?
Yeah, Sherry, would you like to ask?
Well, I don't know what else I can add. That's not gruesome.
Did you find, in your opinion, that Jews should like
Absolutely. Well, we
You-
adored FDR like he was our God. And he returned a whole ship of refugees.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it was a year later, he took 1,000 refugees from Germany and accepted them to the United States, and they settled down in a little town in upstate New York called Oswego. And the people in Oswego took them under their wings and cared for them and found them jobs, and they were wonderful to them. But a thousand refugees was not enough.
It seems like the mentality not rely on government help. Do you find that those that came, like most of them did not end up on government help? They really worked and did whatever they can to survive on their own, or a lot of people ended up taking government benefits and that?
I know a lot of people, and nobody I know took welfare. Nobody.
So it wasn't like the government was seeing too many people.
Not, not to my knowledge. It's no, we were refugees, but we were proud to work and get along with everybody, and don't get any outside help. It's different today, of course. It's quite different. But I'm glad that Rabbi Rachel in Hilo got me started on this, because it's very it's good for everybody to know, because a lot of people never heard of the Holocaust. I can't believe that. And the students here are wonderful. They're really very intent on learning, and they were so good to me when they came from Waimea, 2 classes. Yeah, there were 100 kids coming from Waimea to Kona. And they And I gave a talk, and they were so appreciative. And they all came over, hugged me, and kissed me. That was before the pandemic. Couldn't do it now. And one at one time, the parents were invited to the school from school kids, and I met a couple. They had one boy, he was 17, and she said, Miss Goldie, can I ask you something? I said, ask away. If I have the answer, I'll tell you. He said, she said, she says, every morning for breakfast, my son comes down for breakfast, and he hasn't got a word to say. He says nothing. He says, good morning. And then he's off to school. So they don't get anything out of him. But I want to tell you, after you talk, he couldn't shut up. And I said, I'm so happy that it went through and it didn't come out the other side. They didn't got to him. And they had an assignment. I was very surprised that Hawaiian schools offer Holocaust. They all have Holocaust on their agenda. I don't know which class, but they had an assignment, and they had different tables set up in the auditorium, and everybody had to build something that would spell out or would relate to Holocaust. And I was eager to see what they say for Israel, you know. And it was so simple. They had, what do you say it in English? I can't say it in English. Do you speak German? Stacheln. What they put around jails. Yeah, barbed wire. I couldn't think of it. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, they had a table set up. Stark, was very stark, and barbed wire all around. And in the middle, they fashioned a Star of David with gold inserts. I mean, they really went all out for that. And they had other cars from other countries. And they had from Japan, from China. I mean, everybody was assigned, you do this, you do that. And it was very intensive, just to go from one table to the next and find out what these kids are thinking. How are they thinking? So.
Have you been to the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles?
No,
Oh,
no.
they have a program.
I went to the one in Washington, D.C., and we spent a whole day there, my husband and I. And there was one floor, I think it was the 8th floor. It was all of my city, Köln. And all my fellow students were gone. They got books, and then I looked through them. Not one was alive, left alive. So I really don't like to do this, you know, speak about it. I know it's necessary because people, when I talk to them, they react like, oh, I never heard of that. But it touches me. Sometimes I have backflashes. I wake up, I said, oh, I'm in your own bed. What are you complaining about? And we know we have to educate them, but we can't just educate by books. If more people like I would come forward and tell their experiences, it's much better than reading it. You can elaborate when you read, but you know when it's true, then it's a different story. And I know I won't be able to sleep tonight, but that's me. It grabs me, and I have total recourse. I can name you all my teachers' names from grade school. Oh yeah, I wanted to tell you this. I have to tell you this. My father's sister, her name was Jeanette, and she lived in Berlin, and she was an artist. And every time for my birthday, I was her favorite niece. She called me Miss Spunk. she wrote to me a personalized poem for my birthday. I should have saved them. I didn't. And she gave me for my birthday. I was very young. I was maybe 10 or 11. Oh dear. She gave me a booklet with nothing inside. It was all lined paper. And she said to me, Goldina, I want you to put down your good times and your bad times. Don't make it a diary. Make it a journal. This is a journal. And I put down good things that happened and things that were not so good. So I did that. I listened to her and I had it hidden away. And the booklet was finished. And it became my adult times too, you know. I was married 64 years to the same man. And that was something to talk about. Other people talk about it, not me. I know it was good. So, but anyhow, I put that little booklet in my bookcase, and my daughter was looking for something. And she found that, and she says, "What's that?" And it said journal. My maiden name is Drucker, so Goldina Drucker. Oh, that's mom's. Let's look at it. And my friends over there will recognize what I'm saying. And somebody, I have a group of friends, they're my Mahjong friends. We play Mahjong once a week to keep our brains safe. And one of our friends said, you know, you should put this in print. You should make a book. And she didn't say to me. Her husband, he's a pilot, but on the side he does publishing. So he looked it over and he said, yeah, we can do that. So he did the publishing, and one other friend did the look at the printing or whatever they had to do to make this book. And what did Rosie do? You remember? Editing. Oh yeah, she edited it. She made make sure that I didn't have any my English wasn't that good. So she had a big job to do. And on my 36th, not 30, I'm dreaming. On my 96th birthday, we had a big party. Every year on my, after I hit 90, they gave me a big birthday party. So we had something like between 30 and 40 people. And I said to my daughter, I said, now it's my turn. It's my birthday and I want to welcome my guests. She says, no, Mom, you don't. I said, it's your home. She has a bigger home than I have. And I almost fought with her there. And she says, no, I have something to say. And she told the story, how she found this journal and they made it into a book. And it was published and Amazon has it. And I just stood there with my mouth open. I had not the slightest idea that went behind my back to do something like that. So she bought enough books for every guest, gave them a book. And the latest I hear, I went to my doctor the other day, and he said, Goldie, I like your book. I said, how do you get my book? I didn't give you one. He says, it's making the rounds here on the floor in the office, the doctor's office. So everybody knows me that it's not good. I don't know if it's good or not. But I was stunned that she gave me this book. I should have brought it just to show you what it looks like. And so sometimes good things happen. But it went into my adult life, so it's not just my years in Germany under Hitler. So can I enlighten anybody else? No. How long did I take?
I have a question, if I
Yes.
can ask.
Yeah.
What is the name of your book, and what is the name of the book and the name of the author for the survivor, Holocaust survivor that spoke at your temple?
Oh, Ruth Gruber. Can you look
Yeah.
it up?
The author is Ruth Gruber, R-U-T-H.
Gruber,
Gruber,
G-R-U-B-E-R.
G-U-B-E-R.
Yeah,
Gruber.
yeah. And the name of the book is Haven.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I heard that before and I couldn't hear the question. Thank you very much. And your book?
What's the title of your
My
book?
book is Recollections by Goldina.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing. This was very, very meaningful.
It's my privilege to do that. Yeah, I want to get more into schools, but I have to wait till the pandemic is over. So